Have you ever felt like you're giving yourself away in little pieces? Like you're helping everyone, your children, your friends, your neighbors, but hearing your own needs less and less? Today, we're going to talk about 6 quiet but dangerous ways you can lose yourself just by trying to be a good person. This isn't about blame, it's about understanding. And most importantly, each step we'll discuss can help you reclaim your confidence, your energy, and your self-respect. Let's begin. One thing I often notice, people say yes much more than they really want to. It may sound harmless at first. After all, what's wrong with helping out? But over time, saying yes when you feel no inside can wear you down, emotionally, mentally, and even physically. I've seen it again and again with older adults who were taught that being agreeable is the same as being kind. The problem is, kindness without boundaries becomes exhaustion. When you always say yes to others, you might be quietly saying no to yourself, your rest, your peace, your dignity. And if that inner no is ignored too long, it doesn't go away. It just turns into stress, resentment, or even illness. You don't need to be harsh or cold to protect your energy, but you do need to be honest with yourself, and that starts with small steps. I remember a man named Marvin, 72, retired mechanic from Ohio. He was strong, reliable, the kind of man everyone called when something needed fixing. After he retired, he found himself even busier than before. His daughter asked him to pick up the grandkids 3 times a week. His neighbor asked him to fix the garage door. His church needed volunteers for weekend projects. Marvin said yes to everything because he felt guilty saying no. He told me once, "If I say no, I'm afraid people will think I'm lazy, or worse, that I don't care." But over time, Marvin started missing his own doctor appointments. He stopped taking his afternoon walks. He even began ignoring phone calls because deep down, he was afraid it would be another request. When I saw him in my office, he looked tired, not just physically, tired in his bones. We talked about boundaries, what they really mean, and why setting them doesn't make you selfish, it makes you whole. The turning point for Marvin was realizing that people weren't actually upset when he said, "maybe later." Most of them respected it, and some even offered help in return. One of the simplest ways I've seen people start building healthy boundaries is by using this phrase, "let me think about it and I'll get back to you." It gives you time to check in with yourself, to ask, do I truly want to do this? Do I have the energy? Is it mine to carry? You're not closing the door, you're just not leaving it wide open every time. Try it once this week. When someone asks for your time or energy, take a breath and give yourself permission to wait before answering. You may be surprised how natural it starts to feel. You deserve a life that includes you, not just your helpfulness. Saying no isn't rejection. It's a way of saying yes to your well-being. Like a garden needs pruning to stay healthy, your life needs space. You are not a machine. You're a person with value, needs, and limits. And those limits are not flaws. They're signs that you are human and worthy of care, just like anyone else. Something else I've noticed more and more. Many older adults are caring for everyone else, but forgetting themselves in the process. It's a quiet kind of exhaustion, and it builds slowly. You might think you're just being a good parent, a helpful neighbor, a dependable friend. But when you're constantly focused on the needs of others, your own feelings and needs start to fade into the background. As we age, that tendency can grow stronger, especially after a big life change, like the loss of a spouse or retirement. You may start to pour all your energy into caring for others as a way to feel needed, to fill the silence, or to avoid your own grief or fears. It's not selfish to care, but it can become self-erasing when you're the only one not receiving care, even from yourself. I remember a woman I worked with a few years ago, Beverly, 68, from Arizona. After her husband passed away, she felt unmoored. Her days, once filled with companionship, became long stretches of quiet. She started calling her adult children more often, offering to help with errands, cooking meals, checking in constantly. She sent surprise gifts just because, birthday cards in advance, even groceries they hadn't asked for. At first, it gave her a sense of purpose, but over time, she felt more and more tired and a little resentful when her efforts went unnoticed. In one of our sessions, she shared something her daughter had told her. "Mom, we love you, but you don't have to do all this. You can just be you." That moment hit Beverly hard. She realized she had been so focused on showing love that she forgot to allow space for her own emotions. We talked a lot about balance, how giving to others should never come at the cost of giving to yourself. What often helps in these situations is creating a small, simple daily habit to turn your attention inward again. One of my favorite tools is what I call the warm note. Just one short message you write to yourself every day. Something like, "Today I am important too," or "I deserve peace." You can write it on a sticky note for your fridge, in a notebook by your bed, or even set it as a daily reminder on your phone. The act may feel awkward at first, but with time it becomes a moment of self-acknowledgement, a quiet way of saying, "I see myself, I matter." It doesn't fix everything overnight, but it's a steady way to rebuild your sense of self-worth and inner connection. Remember, caring for yourself isn't indulgence, it's necessity. Just like the oxygen mask on a plane, you can't help others well if you've been running on empty. Taking time to nourish your own heart makes your care for others even more genuine and lasting. You are not selfish for needing rest, for needing kindness, for needing to feel seen. You are human, and you deserve the same love you so often give to others. Another pattern I see often: older adults feeling uncomfortable asking for help, even when they need it most. I completely understand where that comes from. Many of you were raised with the belief that strength means independence, that needing support is a weakness, or worse, a burden to those around you. Over time, this belief becomes deeply rooted, especially after retirement or the loss of a partner, when routines shift and you find yourself needing help with things you used to handle easily. But here's the truth. No matter how strong you are, no one is meant to go through life alone. Asking for help isn't a sign of failure, it's a sign of trust. And trust is what builds real connection, not just between people, but within families, friendships, and communities. I remember working with a man named Donald, 75 years old, from Michigan. He had always been the fixer in his family, the one everyone called when something broke or went wrong. Then one winter, he slipped on the ice and fractured his leg. Instead of calling his son, who lived 20 minutes away, Donald spent a week getting around the house on a wheeled office chair, dragging himself from room to room. He told me later he just didn't want to bother anyone. He even said, "My son works hard. He doesn't need me adding to his plate." But the truth was, his silence worried his family even more. When his son finally found out, he came right away and said something that stayed with Donald and with me. "Dad, you're a hero to me, but even heroes get to lean on someone." That moment opened a door for them. Donald started speaking more honestly with his family, and little by little, he let them show up for him the way he'd always shown up for them. That change didn't make him weaker. It made their bond stronger. What often helps in situations like this is choosing one person you trust, just one, and starting small. Instead of saying, "I need help," which can feel too heavy, try saying, "This has been a little hard for me. Would you mind giving me a hand?" The more you do it, the more natural it feels. And you'll often find that people are not only willing, but grateful to be included in your world in this way. You're not taking something from them. You're giving them a chance to care. Let me leave you with this. Asking for help doesn't make you any less capable, wise, or independent. It simply means you're human. Like a bridge needs support from both sides to stay standing, relationships grow stronger when there's room for giving and receiving. You are not a burden. You are loved. And letting someone be there for you might be the most powerful thing you can do, for both of you. Here's something I gently remind many of my clients. Your right to dream doesn't expire. It's surprisingly common for older adults to feel like their time for exploring new interests has passed, as if the space for dreams was reserved for the young. I've heard phrases like, "That's for someone else now," or "It's too late for me," more times than I can count. And I understand where that comes from. After decades of working, raising families, caring for others, it's easy to fall into the mindset that your job is done, that now your role is simply to support the dreams of your children or grandchildren. But the truth is, having purpose, curiosity, and excitement is not a young person's privilege. It's a human need at any age. When we stop dreaming, even in small ways, something inside us quietly dims. And when we give ourselves permission to start again, no matter how late it may seem, something just as quietly lights back up. One woman I worked with, Gladys, 70 years old from Texas, had been a bookkeeper her whole life. She was responsible, precise, the kind of person who always made sure things ran smoothly, at work, at home, everywhere. When she retired, she expected to feel free, but instead, she told me she felt invisible. Her children were grown, her house was quiet, and her days blended into each other. She spent her mornings cleaning, her afternoons watching TV, and her evenings wondering if this was what life had become. Then one day, while dropping off books at her local library, she saw a flyer for a watercolor class. At first, she walked right past it. Then she turned back. She said something about the paper, the colors, the idea of making something just for herself. It called to her. She signed up on the spot. The first few classes felt strange, even childish, but then she started to relax. Within a few months, she had a small corner in her kitchen dedicated to painting. A year later, her local gallery invited her to display 3 of her pieces. When she told me about it, she laughed and said, "I feel like I just woke up after a very long nap." What often helps in cases like this is to take a quiet moment and write down 3 things you've always wanted to try. Not for someone else, not to prove anything, but just because they speak to you. Maybe it's learning to play the piano or baking from scratch or writing a poem. Pick one, even the smallest one, and give yourself a month to try it. Not to master it, just to begin. You don't need permission, you just need to start. Remember this: as long as you are breathing, your story is still being written. You are not done. You are not behind. Your time is not over. Even a tiny dream can light up a whole day. Even a small change can shift how you feel in your own skin. You are allowed to want more, not because you haven't done enough, but because you're still here. And that, in itself, is reason enough to begin. Let me share something I often say gently to my clients. Respect is not something you have to earn over and over again. Many older adults I work with have gotten so used to putting others first, smoothing things over, or staying quiet for the sake of peace that when someone actually listens to them or treats them with dignity, they're almost surprised. I hear things like, "Well, they meant well," or "It's not worth making a fuss." But the truth is, being treated with respect, in words, in tone, in behavior, should be a given, not a gift. As we get older, many of us start to believe we have to stay agreeable to stay included. We laugh off being dismissed. We stay silent when our opinions are brushed aside. But over time, this erodes your sense of worth, and it quietly teaches others how to treat you. What I've learned, and what I've helped others rediscover, is that you don't have to demand respect with anger. You can ask for it calmly, clearly, and firmly. And it often begins with how you speak to yourself. I remember one client, Raymond, 66, from California, who shared a moment that stuck with me. He was kind, thoughtful, a bit on the quiet side, and deeply devoted to his family. But he had this ongoing tension with his daughter-in-law. She would interrupt him often, correct him sharply in front of others, and once even joked that his opinions were from another century. Raymond usually smiled it off. He didn't want to start anything, especially in front of the grandkids. But one afternoon, while reading with his granddaughter, she looked up and asked him, "Grandpa, why does she talk to you like that?" That one question made him stop. He realized he'd been accepting something that didn't feel right, not because he agreed with it, but because he didn't know how to respond. In our sessions, we practiced a few simple phrases, nothing confrontational, just clear signals, like, "Can I finish what I was saying?" or "I'd like to be heard." The first time he used one, he told me he felt nervous, but he also felt a shift. People began to pause and listen, and more importantly, he started seeing himself differently. What often helps is preparing 1 or 2 respectful phrases that you can use when someone speaks over you or brushes you off. Try saying, "Let me finish that thought," or "I feel like I'm not being heard right now." You don't need to raise your voice or justify your feelings. Just name your experience in a calm way. It's not about winning the moment. It's about standing in your own value. Here's what I believe. Respect isn't something you wait around hoping to receive. It begins with how you carry yourself and how you gently but firmly show others what's acceptable. Think of it like adjusting the mirror in your car. No one else will do it for you, and you'll only see clearly once it's set for you. You're not asking for special treatment. You're reminding the world that you are here, you matter, and your voice deserves space just like anyone else's. Here's something I say often, especially to those who feel like they've become background characters in someone else's story. Your life still belongs to you. As we get older, it's easy to slowly shift our focus away from our own needs and start living through the lives of others, our children, grandchildren, neighbors, even people on TV. For many older adults, especially those living with family, there's this quiet fear of being forgotten, of not being useful anymore, and that fear can lead you to constantly involve yourself in someone else's problems, routines, or plans. At first, it feels like connection, but over time, it can blur your identity. You stop asking what you want, what brings you joy. Your calendar fills up with someone else's schedule, and your thoughts begin to orbit around their needs. What starts as love or helpfulness can turn into a kind of quiet erasure, and that's something I've seen more times than I can count. I once worked with a woman named Shirley, 69 years old, from Florida. After her husband passed, she sold their home and moved in with her daughter's family. It made sense financially and emotionally. They were close, and her daughter genuinely wanted her there. But as time went on, Shirley started to feel like she existed more as a helper than as herself. She cooked dinner most nights, picked up the kids from school, and stayed home on weekends so her daughter and son-in-law could get time together. She didn't resent them, not at all, but when we started talking, she said something that struck me deeply. "I'm here, but I'm not really living my life." She couldn't remember the last time she did something just for her. She wasn't reading her favorite books anymore, hadn't gone to her weekly water aerobics class, and even stopped painting, something she'd loved for over 30 years. Together, we worked on reconnecting her with her own sense of time. We started small, just 1 hour a day. That was her time. No chores, no grandkids, no errands, just Shirley. She started using that hour to paint again. Eventually, she joined a local group for retired artists, and one day, when her grandson asked, "Why are you always painting now?" she smiled and said, "Because I remembered I still love it." What often helps in these cases is something very simple. Set aside 1 hour a day that belongs only to you. No outside news, no background noise, no solving someone else's to-do list. Just you, doing something that brings you peace, pleasure, or curiosity. It doesn't have to be productive. It just has to be yours. That small act of reclaiming time sends a message to your mind and body. I'm still here, and I still matter. Here's what I want you to know. Your story isn't a side note to someone else's chapter. It's your own book. You are not just supporting cast. You are still the author of your days. And even if the plot has changed, even if there's grief or silence or transition, you still get to choose what fills the next page. 1 hour at a time, one choice at a time, and that choice belongs to you. If you recognized yourself in even one of these points, that's already a step forward. Write in the comments, which one felt closest to your experience, and what small change are you ready to try? Subscribe and hit the bell. Every new video will feel like a conversation with someone who truly understands you. Remember, you are not a burden. You are not too late. You are a person of value. And life goes on, especially when you choose to hold its hand.